The bottom line is, when you have an engine put in your JK and you intend to keep your JK for the long term, you want to make sure that you get an engine that's going to be compliant. And that means if you move from a state like Alabama or Louisiana to Arizona or Nevada. Now, Arizona's stepping up emissions, Utah's stepping up emissions, Colorado's stepping up emissions. You want to make sure that your Jeep is going to be compliant in the jurisdiction you go to. And if you intend to sell your JK, you want to be sure that your JK is compliant, because you are responsible for tampering if you sell a vehicle. It's actually a federal law. So to get a JK with, let's say, a hacked operating system, a hybrid, running a GM engine with a Chrysler transmission, these are all issues that you may run into in the future. And that's just the risk you're going to have to run. Now, the 5.3 LMG, LC9, LH6, LY5 should be compliant in your jurisdiction. Again, you have to check because every jurisdiction has the right to implement their own rules. The 6-liter in general would not be if you were required to provide proof of origin of the engine. What that would be is a salvage title or a letter from the dealer explaining the engine family. And the engine family is not very well understood, but let's just take this LMG for example. In 2010, GM took the LY5, added flex fuel to it, and variable valve timing, and called the LMG. And the LMG basically was in production from 2010 through about 2014. So if you got a 10 or a 12 or a 13 LMG, they're essentially all the same engine and from the same family. And there's overlap there. But the labs would rather you say, I have an engine that's newer than my vehicle, and then there's no ambiguity. So those are the, not the, how do I say it? When you go to the lab, they want to make it as clean and easy as possible. They want to test your check engine light. They're going to hook up a analyzer. They're going to operate the check engine light to make sure it functions. They're going to look at the monitors. They're going to make sure the monitors are supported. At least most labs will. They're going to make sure the monitors are supported and they're complete. Now here in Nevada, we're allowed to have one monitor on set, but when we go to the lab to have the vehicle certified, they want 0 monitors on set. And that kind of comes down to the inspector that you get. If you get an inspector that will follow the rule of 1 monitor being on set, then you might just get away with 1 monitor being on set. Other inspectors may not do that. So it's always better to play safe. Get a engine that is compliant in your JK. The days of throwing in a Hemi and saying, oh, well, we'll turn the monitors off, or let's get this Gen 3 LS engine and throw it in there because I live in Louisiana, those days are going to go away. And if you want to assure that you're going to remain compliant for the future, get something that's compliant. These engines don't cost much. They actually cost less than a lot of these engines that are not compliant. So there's no reason not to go with one. The 6.2 engines are awesome, and most of them are compliant in the JK. They just cost more. They run in premium gas. You've seen me do a lot of 6.2 test drives. But I got to say that I'm having a good time in this 5.3. I'm going up this hump to Pahrump, which traditionally in a 6-cylinder is a pain, but I'm cruising speed limit with 1600 RPM. I'm not downshifting in this 5.3. This is not a terribly heavy JK, and this 5.3 is awesome. I have a 5.3 in my wife's JK, and we get 20 miles to the gallon on road trips. I love it. So the 5.3 is a great motor. Now we're moving into the Gen 5 engines, and I think the Gen 5 5.3 is going to add some more versatility to the JK, more complexity with direct injection and all that. It's not going to have the simplicity of the Gen 4, but the Gen 4 5.3 has been around a long, long time, and it's been rationalized. It's been proven. If you get an AFM engine, which is most likely what you're going to get, there are some oddball 5.3s without AFM. They are limited in performance with the lifters. You don't really want to spin them up too much, but as long as you stay within the design parameters, it's an extremely reliable engine. It will get good gas mileage. It will go for hundreds of thousands of miles. It will run on pretty much any gas you can put in it, including low-grade gas. It's just a bargain in a JK. A lot of my customers just find it's not enough power for them because they're not just looking to get the job done. They're looking for performance. They want a muscle car. So if you want that kind of performance, of course, step up to the 6.0. 6.0s are pushing 400 horsepower. And if you want to spend the money on gas, get the all aluminum 6.2. Now we're talking over 400 horsepower. You want to step up from that, go to an LS3. We're talking 430 plus horsepower. You want more than that, we offer 500 horsepower plus normally aspirated engines. And now with the new Gen 5 engines, we're finding they are performing very well in the mid-range. So a 5.3 Gen 5 and a 6.2 Gen 5 really outperform their Gen 4 counterparts. Not by a lot, but they do outperform them. So there's another solution in remaining emissions compliant. And I know you keep hearing me harp over this emissions compliance and redundancies and all that, but that's just the way things are going. And many of my competitors have been in trouble for emissions, and many of their customers have had their registrations pulled. And I know they're dealing with it. We're dealing with it in a different way, and we've actually dealt with it from day one, and that was to make them follow the rules and make them emissions compliant. And yes, we got criticism for our kit being more complex and our kit having more hardware and software, but that's just how it is. You want to make it right. It's not easy to do it the hard way. And when it comes time for you to sell your JK or register your JK, you're going to be glad that you're going to have that support, that you're going to be able to say, yes, I have the OE calibrations, and yes, all my monitoring is US EPA approved. And if you have an issue or a question, you're going to be able to call us, and we're going to do our best to work you through it. Now, we can't ensure that your installation is proper if you buy a kit, and we can't control the laws if the laws change. But from the way things stand now, if you go to your lab and you talk to your referee or inspector and you get what the rules are and you follow those rules, we will support you with that. We're not going to turn monitors off that are going to get you in trouble. We're not going to hack the calibration and import segments. We're going to keep it pure so that you have the best chance possible of keeping your JK compliant. And the reality is there's not much downside to that either. These things still perform great, and there's an upside. The upside is the safety and the redundancy, the diagnostic capability. Imagine what it's like to have a hybrid or a hack tune diagnosed. It's I've actually done a lot of work with Hemi swaps. A lot of my customers have them. And to be fair, you can hook up a scanner and you can diagnose them just like anything else. But let's just say you do find a bad PCM, and I have. Here in Vegas, we've had several Hemi customers have TIPMs and PCMs melt down, and I have to send them back east to get replacement PCMs. Now, we do have our own tuning that we can do on these PCMs, but again, we like to keep everything OE. So we use GM TIS, or Technical Information System, SPS Service Programming, to load your calibration into these GM computers. And we're talking about the GM ECM, BCM, TCM, and sometimes other modules like power mode modules. And when you go with a factory calibration, it is what it is. It's a factory calibration. So you have that confidence, you have that assurance that when you go to the dealership in California, they have that operating system verified, that it's going to be the correct operating system. I think some of the labs are bending a little and seeing the need for these V8 swaps and supercharger swaps. So they are allowing manufacturers to make concessions. It's almost like an EO, an executive order, where the manufacturers are taking these hacked calibrations and adding things and making monitors set. And I think, especially like in states like Colorado, where there's a giant presence of these JKs with V8s, they're making concessions. They may be bending the meaning of the US EPA rules a bit to cater to the need. Doesn't mean these vehicles are running any dirtier. Probably not, but they're probably also not running in a certified US EPA state either. So there's kind of a gray area there, and it's kind of like the gray vehicles that were imported back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. There was some liberties given. We choose to do the other thing. We just choose to stick with the way to the word of the law and not try to get around it or go under it. Because at some point it's going to come back and bite you. And it may not be today, it might be 5 years from now. We don't know what the US EPA is going to do 5 years from now. So that's the deal. I know I ramble a lot about emissions. I'm off-road now with this Gen 4 5.3. Great engine. Probably the way the JK should have been from the factory. I can tell you that I've got probably 30,000 miles on JKs with 5.3s, and yes, there are times I wish I had more power, but most of the time the 5.3 delivers. It gets good economy, it gets me down the highway at the speed limit with no struggling. Up in the mountains or on the long grades with the air conditioning on, I will say that there's excessive downshifting if you have a heavy JK, and I'm not, of course, I don't like that, but it's not all the time. If you're going to use your JK for long highway trips and you got 40s, and just don't get the 5.3. But if you're going to use your JK like this customer is, his JK is relatively light. It's relatively simple. He's going to love this thing, and he's going to have that. He's going to have the assurance that it's emissions compliant. It has all the circuitry and software required to keep it legal. He's going to be able to run regular gas. He has all the redundancies, safeties built into it. He's not running a reduced circuit count harness that takes shortcuts and compromises. He's not running hacked and patched calibrations to get the engine to run in a non-certified configuration so that you don't have those safeties. He's going to have the confidence that this vehicle is basically the same, has the same characteristics as a factory Silverado with a 5.3. And that's a peace of mind that you really can't get with a lot of engine conversions. Many engine conversions just simply need to go back to the manufacturer if something goes wrong. And in some rare cases, that's true with our swaps too. But it's much less likely to occur than with some of the other swaps out there. So I've rambled enough, and I will be driving I don't know, a 550 horsepower JK, a 8-speed LT. I got 3 of those coming up. Another one I'm really looking forward to is a 5.3 we got running, Gen 5 in a late model JK. We got all sorts of good stuff coming up, so stay tuned.